So South Korea has already made its mark on an already great year for horror in 2016 with The Wailing and Train to Busan. Last week I reviewed The Wailing, and now we're going to review Train to Busan. Train to Busan stars Yoo-gong, Soo-in Kim, and is directed by Sang Ho-yeon. So guys, over the past few months, I've been constantly hearing about these two South Korean films, The Wailing and Train to Busan. If you look at my Letterboxd rankings page, you'll see that The Wailing is in my top 5 of the year. That's how good this movie was. So the next one I was definitely wanting to get a review out for was Train to Busan. And how good was it? It was freaking fantastic. So in Train to Busan, main character Suk-woo, he is a businessman, and he's just one of those really successful guys that doesn't have time to spend with his daughter. His daughter is Soo-in, and you can tell from the beginning of this movie that they have a very strained relationship. So strained that she wants to get back to her mother in Busan. He agrees to take her to Busan, but there is a chemical leak that we see at the beginning of the movie, and that causes this zombie outbreak. And they have to deal with this in the worst place possible, on a train. Remember that scene in World War Z? Probably the best scene in the movie, when they're actually on a plane and the zombie outbreak happens? Well, that was only what, like 10 minutes of the movie, 5 minutes? For this, it's the whole movie on a train. So can you imagine how crazy that would be? But what works so well for this movie is the story arc, the characters, the relationships. The characters in this movie, most of them anyway, they start out one way, but then they end up different because of the struggle that they go through to survive. And really an underlying theme throughout this movie is apathy and selfishness. When faced with disaster like this, most of the people in this movie, they are selfish. All they want to do is protect themselves. They don't care about anybody else. And that is the main character's issue at the beginning of this movie. He only cares about himself and his daughter is saying, hey, why aren't we helping these people? And more than any other character, he goes through the biggest change throughout the movie. And he even realizes that, hey, I am not just important. Everybody else around me is important. If we help each other, then we have a better chance of getting through this. Now let's talk about a couple of the characters in this movie because they are interesting. The first one is the hobo. And when you first see him in the movie, you think, is he a zombie? Because he's just, he looks homeless. And you quickly see that he is very selfless. He wants to help others. And I think one of the themes in this is if you are rich, then more than likely you're going to be selfish, which is not always untrue. Greed does cause selfishness. And look no further than the richest guy in this movie. He is the biggest asshole you will ever see in a zombie movie. All he wants to do is protect himself, even going so far as to using other people as a shield. You just love to hate this guy. And one of my favorite characters in the movie is the character Sang-hwa. Him and his pregnant wife, they are trying to get through this mess, and he is just a badass, really. He's a big guy, but that's not the big thing. The big thing is he's willing to risk his life to save others, and you can't help but love this character throughout. He really puts himself on the line for everyone else, and he establishes this friendship with the main character. And he's a big part of why the main character starts rethinking his own personal values. And then finally, the main characters of this movie, Suk-woo and Soo-in. This little girl is just heart-wrenching. There are so many scenes, like the little girl in The Wailing, where she just has to completely lose it and become emotional. And you can't help but love her. She's just the sweetest thing ever. And she really is the emotional core of this movie. But what I love about her is she's constantly reminding her father, why are you so selfish? Why don't you love other people? Why don't you want to help other people? She is actually teaching her father a lesson instead of the other way around. And I love characters like that. It just goes to show that it doesn't matter how old you are, there is something to be learned from everybody. Now let's talk about the zombies real quick. They are really awesome. They're not walkers, they are runners, much like in the 28 series. And that just makes them that much more deadly. And they're on a train. So the main characters are constantly having to be on the go. They have very little time to stop and think. Now, if I had to pick apart this movie and give it a con, I think the only thing would be maybe the visual effects aren't the best, but they don't take you out of the movie at all. The characters really keep you invested, and that's really important. I mean, I've seen movies with great visual effects, but they have the shittiest characters you could ever imagine, and you end up getting a horrible movie. So for that, I would definitely give Train to Busan a high purchase worthy. It is a great zombie film, and it's highly rewatchable too. So I think this is one that I'm gonna be watching every year just because I love good zombie movies, and this is one of the best. So what are your thoughts on Train to Busan? Looking forward to hearing them. Also, recommend a foreign film in the comments section. Could be horror, could be anything. I'm wanting to get plenty of ideas from you guys. Also, if you want more ideas, make sure you go over to Killer Flicks, where we're talking horror, all different types of subgenres. And we've been talking foreign horror quite a bit lately because of these two movies. Also, if you like what you see, make sure you subscribe to my channel. And of course, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And Drumdum out.